Hey y'all, this is Sam. Back in December, I had an amazing chat with Jan Camille, the founder of J. Camille Co., an agency specializing in rooted reclamation, branding energetics, and ethical media for entrepreneurs. We talked all about regenerative communications. As a strategist by nature, their work is guided by a commitment to intuitive ideation, conscious creation, and digital activism. And what I loved about the conversation is that Jan uses their corporate creative and strategy experience to reframe and transform marketing. Their approach is a vibrant tapestry of cultural exploration, innovation, and transformation. And I think right now is the perfect time to release this podcast. In the face of genocide and rising fascism, it's more important than ever that we use our voices to create social change. And we ask on this conversation, how do we use our voices and our communications to change the world and show that a better path forward is possible? So let's jump right into how we evolve with the power of regenerative storytelling. I hope you enjoy the conversation. I do want to start with like kind of the most basic of that, which, a lot of people hear about communications and they hear about regenerative things, but they're not really sure what that means together. So would love to just hear your perspective on like what is regenerative communications.
Yeah, I think the concept, or at least one of the most foundational principles of regeneration itself, to me at least, what it means is like not being extractive. So the opposite of extractive, which is actually whatever resources that we do use and utilize, we inject back into the system more, like twice fold, tenfold. And on the extractive point, that's not just like the actual, physical capital, tangible capital, but also in a way that is in this digital era today, like people's data. And even just treating people like humans and not like statistics. So just kind of shifting out of the extractive approach into a regenerative approach.
Awesome. Yeah, and when you and I originally connected, we talked a lot about like regenerative communications and also like the idea of marketing and how that term is very rooted in harmful systems.
Mm-hmm.
And that so much of marketing is that extractive, it's dehumanizing, it's asking people to become consumers and users, to buy and to consume and to work. And I think that's really interesting because, a lot of this is talking about how do organizations that are meant to create change, like nonprofits, like political campaigns, grassroots organizations, like a lot of them are rooted, or all of us are rooted in these harmful systems that we live in. And so like, how do those types of organizations move towards regenerative communications and away from marketing when it is such a dominant force in the world?
Right. So I did love and appreciate the way that you like just you laid it out so well, that your theory of change, like all these things in the roots of that tree visual in your theory of change infographic, and how marketing is like literally at the base of the tree. But
Yeah.
just like just like how money is reacted to or perceived, or the dominant relationship and how it's used and abused, therefore it's like seen as inherently evil. Marketing also, in the same vein and in such a parallel way, like just gained that reputation as well. But that is not what these things inherently are. Same thing with like algorithms. These things are tools, and it's how they're used and the energy and intention of those that are using them. However,
Mhm.
we do see beautiful examples expanding more and more today of marketing, digital activism, marketing being used for good, storytelling, and money being used for good, with humanitarian, fighting climate change, etc. And also, I'm starting to apply that same shift and build that relationship with like algorithms and even AI. So essentially, I see these tools as they are entities in themselves, like they are living, breathing things with themselves. And you, I think like if we really, really want and desire for these tools to do good for us or help us serve and serve us, we have to have that healthy relationship with it. So that's kind of the importance of the energetics, but also the relationship with the tools that we have. It's like they are there, but there is someone plugging in how it's going to be used and entering those inputs, and therefore it's only going to generate the outputs that we demand of it. And so yeah, I think it's just some awareness that would be really supportive in helping people move and see that shift.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I find that really interesting. There's so much depth there, because it's really like it's extracting the systems of oppression from the thing. So in marketing's example, marketing is not inherently bad. And so when you extract the systems of oppression, you begin to see marketing, which is, I reframe it as storytelling, because like to your point, I just think of it so much as that reframe. And I think that's where like a lot of communicators can think is like pushing back against the way that it has been and the way that like we are being incentivized to use these systems, versus how we should be and what makes the most sense for like the work that we are building.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you're so eloquent with your in. I love that, and I'm so like on the same page, because in the same vein, like I think it's going to be just because of how long and how systemic the effects and the utilization of money, algorithms, and marketing are. I don't think that the reframing may happen overnight. Like it's such, it's such a deep and prolonged association with it. So even just so much as like mindful terminology that helps us, our brain, kind of like make that shift, like, oh, it's not that, it's this. And calling it storytelling. Even money by like conscious organizations is referred to as like seed, engine, fuel, things like that. Or advertising is like, how I'm reframing it to heal the social dilemma wound is like I'm just seeing it as ethical media, like a organic and holistic use of this
Yeah.
tool. So yeah, the reframing point is so important. But I think that for now, literally rephrasing it is just going to help us kind of softly transition without a shock to our system. And over time, I think it's inevitable that the association with these tools will, eventually or slowly, like slowly but surely, like purify themselves. And just as much of the different elements of evolution journeys, sometimes we often find ourselves like returning back to something with a healthier relationship with it. And now we get to call it that term again.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, it's interesting. Like I wrote down some of the like words that you use in your LinkedIn profile, and I really appreciate them. And like I want to list these now because I think your point on reframing is so important, because it's like it's about that repetition and how we train ourselves for like what to expect. And I think so much of the language that we use today is based off of old unhealthy systems and old unhealthy like yeah, historical incidences, like all of these things that we, if we reframe, then we are kind of changing the power of those words towards the regenerative systems that we're hoping and working to create. And really, frankly, kind of leaving behind and looking away from those unhealthy systems. So I'm going to read these words, and if you have anything you want to share out, please let me know. So You talk about your work as transformative strategy, quantum branding, holistic websites, multi-dimensional marketing, cinematic storytelling, which I love, and then expansive events.
So you see how like spirited and like quantum vibey and just like
Mm,
energetic, like those things are just inherent in the foundation of my approach to this. So that is all a result of the reframing that we were just talking about. You know, it's not easy to sell, market, or advertise certain things that just have such a like almost like sticky resonance with them. Just even saying the word sell or sales, or
yeah.
even like market and things like that. So it's like in the phrasing that I use with that list in itself, like it's that reframing in application, and it's been really helping me to not be a subject to the fear attached to like the stickiness of almost like the names that have been circulated around for these different fields, and the associations with them. But now it's like I'm able to move towards something that feels aligned and that I just feel good like speaking
Mm,
and sharing about. You know, I'm not going to say the word like sell or sales, but I might say like equip and propel.
yeah. Yeah, and it's like I think there's two things that come to mind when you're talking about that. One is internally, you're leading with your power, right? Like you're leading with the words and the language that feels most right to you, and theoretically for your organization if you're doing communications for your organization. Um, and then the other piece I think is the selling part. And like I have had so many conversations, like especially with entrepreneurs, anyone in the DEI space, anyone who's trying to make a difference in the world, they feel icky about the work that they're doing because they feel like they're selling. And I think how you just shared like makes so much sense to me, because that's work that I'm actively doing, is changing the way I think about like sharing out this newsletter and advice and things. Like, yes, I am selling in the sense of the way that we talk about it, but the like how my values and how I am putting my business into the world doesn't match that language. And so if I reframe it, then I feel I have more of that power to feel confident about like what I'm sharing, and knowing that it's going to connect with the person that I'm trying to connect with.
Yes, exactly. And one thing I am moving towards and hoping to instill the feeling of safety to adopt is the shift away from like arbitrary deadlines, because it's such a visceral experience to stress out about, oh, this campaign has to roll out every single Tuesday at 11:11 a.m. like without fail, you know? And it's just like, okay, but like why? The world goes on. And is it really a service if it is taxing to the people producing this, executing it? And I am really, really so relieved and happy and excited to see more and more of this practice and application. You know, seeing um, innovative or new like rising teams, and organizations, small businesses, nonprofits, actually adopting and integrating this model. It's like, hey, our team is going to be offline for a week. We're just gonna take a mental health week and, you know, support each other on the back end, but we'll be back and everything will be fine. You know, the world is not going to end if an Instagram post doesn't make it on Tuesday at 11:11 a.m.
Well, I'm so grateful for this conversation. It's put me into just the perfect mood, to feel good about the work. And I think that's like the piece that just helps me go, is just knowing that we're all collectively moving in this direction and that we are an instrumental part to that, and we are human and we can support ourselves as we move through this. So this is the last question that I ask everyone, and you've answered a lot of it, but I'd love to hear just some specific examples. How do you stay sane in this wild world?
Um, I give myself permission to detach my laptop and my phone away from my body. I essentially have this, it started as habit stacking, but now it's like it's become second nature to where it's just like, oh, these things are not like my limbs. I can step out.
Yes.
Another way I stay sane is, you know, I am sensitive to my physical environment. So it's really important for me to curate it, especially as a creative. So I tend to like physically work in spaces where there is access to fresh air, bright lighting, big open windows, floor to ceiling if possible, so that whenever I look away from my screen, I remember like, hey, there is outside. There is more to than just this bubble that I'm operating in right now. And so I look outside, I hear the birds, I see the sunshine, I feel the fresh air, and then it calls to me. So I make space for it to access me. It's almost like a natural nature-based like Pomodoro timer. Like I'll hear a bird chirp or just see a beautiful ray of sunshine or feel a breeze, and it's like a nice reminder, like, hey, let's breathe, let's step outside, let's get some fresh air, some vitamin D. So that's really, really important. I used to do the whole like dark room corner of the studio, like leave me alone in my dark bubble, that's it. I mean, and then that led to burnout. So I realized that the environmental factor really is like important. A lot of our work is in the 2D space, and it's important to remember, again, we are human, and that awareness of how truly affected we are by our 3D space is still important. So that's one example. Another way I stay sane is, honestly, there's a lot of discourse about the algorithm or how it's being demonized, just like money is. But I built that relationship with my algorithms, and really curated them to where now that automation is in place. It understands me. It knows what I'm interested in, and that algorithm curation has made, my downtime, internet time, a little bit more wholesome, a little bit more intentional.
Yeah.
And it's helped tremendously. I think a lot of the reason why so many people can relate to each other on just giving the algorithm a bad rep is that the relationship hasn't been built. Like, it's giving you what it thinks you want to see. And if you don't tell it, or if it has no idea, it's going to give you random stuff. And what is the default content of the random free feed? It's like, well, it's curated by someone else. It's curated by, the them. And so we actually have the power to yeah, just like curate what we consume. And it becomes less and less taxing over time. Like, it does take energy. Like, in the beginning, I'll have to actually engage, search for what I do want to see. And once it understands me, it knows what I don't want to see, what I'm like avoiding for the sake of mental health, etc. So that was actually a huge piece, and not just as a content nerd, but I think in today, with how, these devices were never, well, at least in the experiences that we share, like having access to social media, it's so inevitable that we're going to touch one of these devices. We're going to be in the online space at some point in some shape or form. So might as well make it a safe space to be instead of a triggering space to be. So that is actually a huge, huge factor. So those are my two examples that I can give. I could go forever, but that's the 3D environment and the 2D space.
I love those, and those are really helpful reminders for all of us, in just how we be in the 3D and the 2D at the same time. Well, I just wanted to thank you again for chatting with me. I'm like, my brain is just going bonkers around like the idea on language and systems change and regenerative. Like I just hope everyone got some great tips here, because I had a great time chatting with you.
Same. And so thank you so much for inviting me to this conversation and giving me another beautiful reason to continue moving through the inherent, it's scary to take space and express ourselves, and really just extending and sharing this space with me and helping us convince ourselves more and more that it is safe and it is important, and hopefully to all the readers the same.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yay, thank you.